y'all. Welcome to Killer Queens, a true crime podcast. I'm your host, Torella, and like most millennials, I've always had an obsession with true crime. On KQ, you'll find light true crime stories, millennial hypes and gripes, some adult language, and maybe a special guest here and there. Just like a 90s sleepover, we're just a couple BFFs hanging out. So gather round and let's launch right into it. This episode contains discussion of murder. Listener discretion is advised. On January 19th, 1995, in Knoxville, Tennessee, a battered body, nude from the waist up, was found in what can only be described as an absolutely grisly scene. The victim had been tortured, murdered, and her skull had been crushed. But that's not all. She'd also had pentagrams carved into her forehead and into her chest. The investigation led police to a young woman named Christa Pike, and by all accounts, people said, she looks so innocent, she looks so angelic. But she was pure evil. Today, we're going to take a look at one of the most horrific and shocking cases to come out of Knoxville, Tennessee in the 90s. It's a tale of troubled lives, a heartbreaking murder, and a courtroom drama that could have been straight out of Law and Order. All right, you guys, nobody requested this case. I kind of did, I guess, because I was trying to watch an episode of Killer Kids on a case that we covered. And now I think this was a main feed. It was the Scott Moody massacre case. And I accidentally watched the wrong episode at first. I had the wrong season or episode number or whatever. And anyway, this case was on it. And I was like, whoa, this case is very interesting. It's really heartbreaking. And so I started reading up on it and looking into it and looking through court documents, and bingo bongo, here we are. So thank you to me for requesting this case, and thank you to me for writing it up. So you're welcome. That's me also saying you're welcome. So here you go. All right, let's get into it. We're going to talk about Christa Pike's background. She was born on March 10th, 1976. And Christa Gale Pike's early years were anything but ideal for a child to live in. She was raised in West Virginia, and her childhood was really defined by words that have negative connotations: instability, neglect, abuse. Her relationship with her mother was not good at all, and her mom and dad did not stay together. When she was born, I think she was in the hospital for quite a while, and her mom just didn't even come back to visit her. It was not a good situation. They never particularly bonded. Her mom was in and out, gone all the time. She kind of had that revolving door of boyfriends, many of whom sexually abused Christa as a child. And that is absolutely horrific. Certainly nothing okay about it. She's going to use that in later appeals as trying to use those as mitigating factors, which certainly those are not going to be good for a child's development. But just wait till you hear more about Christa. What a peach she is, still is. By the way. Also, I really hope she doesn't get out because she scares me. Oh my gosh. Anyway, by her teenage years, she dropped out of high school and she ended up joining the Job Corps in Knoxville, Tennessee. And that was a government program aimed at helping young people get training so that they could hopefully get better jobs. She enrolled in the nursing program. And Job Corps initially started out as a way to just give young people an alternative to a 4-year college and stuff like that. They could get vocational experience and get jobs. It turned into a program that people were kind of shipping troubled kids off to, which is totally fine. All kids need help. But if you hear interviews with some of the kids that were there, they will tell you, I mean, they're adults now, they're at this time, But they will tell you there were like little mini gangs at Job Corps, and there was a lot of drug use, and there was a lot of violent activity and stuff like that. So our victim went there not as a troubled student, not as a last resort. It became kind of a last resort for a lot of kids, Christa being one of them. So you've got the majority of the people there. This is a last resort. They've been kicked out of everything. Christa was dangerous. And then you've got Colleen, who joins just to try to get computer programming knowledge and to get a job in that field and training. And she doesn't have a history of harmful behavior or anything like that. So they are coming from very different backgrounds and coming from very different behavioral patterns as well. Christa got in a lot of trouble during her teenage years. She was extremely rebellious. Somebody actually told a story that when she was like 5 or 6, so this started very early, she had a very strong interest in like macabre kind of things, like really morbid things. And she would help her family. So her grandmother ended up raising her, and she would help in the slaughterhouse. And one of the cows that had been slaughtered, like she took the blood of the cow and was like drawing on the floor in the cow's blood. And that was kind of concerning. Her grandmother passed away when I believe she was 12 years old. And I think her grandmother was kind of that glue that held things together for her. That was really the only person that she received love from that she could trust. But then she passed away. And Christa's mom really didn't want to deal with her. And she didn't want Christa to affect her relationships with her boyfriends. She didn't want to have to give up anything she wanted to do because she had a kid. So she sent Christa to live with her father. That did not last super long. He couldn't keep her under control. That's how she ends up at Job Corps. Christa meets at Job Corps I'm going to call him a boy. He was 17, named Tadaryl Shipp. And he's also there for training. She meets another girl named Shadala Peterson. And they are kind of a trio. They hang out all the time. She also meets Colleen Slemmer there. And Christa and Colleen don't particularly get along, mainly because Christa is under the impression that Colleen is trying to steal Tadaryl away from her. Nobody else says that was happening. Nobody else says that Colleen wanted to date Tadaryl, anything like that. Other kids there at the program said that Christa was just obsessed with Tadaryl. If she wasn't with him, she was looking for him. His existence and being around him completely consumed her. Now, Tadaryl was into satanic worship, which we know because we've covered other cases that saying that somebody is into satanic worship or into the occult or whatever, or has those kind of beliefs is not necessarily, I would even venture to say, not at all violent. The idea, of course, this is satanic panic time, all of that kind of stuff. The idea at the time was if you wore black clothes, you painted your nails black, you were a Satan worshiper and you were going to sacrifice humans. Obviously not the case, but Tadaryl actually did talk about human sacrifice. He told one of the counselors at Job Corps that he had to sacrifice a human as some kind of like, not a checklist, but something to get to like, something that he needed to check off as part of his beliefs, and it had to do with like the moons and when they were going to be in particular places and all this stuff. This counselor thought he was bullshitting and was like, that's stupid. I don't believe you. I don't think anything like that would ever happen. And here we are. I did not see any evidence that Christa was a satanic follower in any way before she met Tadaryl, but it seemed like that was something that they did together, and they both got really into Tadaryl already. She gets into it. I'm not sure that Tadaryl, I don't know. I mean, he was talking about human sacrifice, but I don't know that anything ever would have happened had he not met Christa. I mean, I guess we would never know that, but that's not typical of people who practice Satan worship or whatever. It's just not. Like, it's not a thing where they're going around sacrificing humans all the time. So I don't really know where he, that's what he thought it meant, I guess. Colleen Slemmer was 19 years old at the time that she was murdered, and she was known for her big heart and infectious smile. Those who loved her remember her as adventurous, as full of life. She was always reaching out to help others. She was very involved in helping disabled children in her hometown, and she tried to continue any outreach and work to help others that she could anywhere that she was. It was very important to her. Her mom just has absolutely fond memories of her, of course. They were very close. They talked often. Her mom did say that leading up to her murder, Colleen wanted to come home. She did not want to stay at Job Corps. She said, I don't really think this is the place for me. I want to come back home. And her mom was like, fine, totally, come back home. And she said that the program wouldn't let her leave because she'd signed an agreement. I'm sorry, you don't own me. I need more information about that, because if she wants to leave, she can leave. She's not government ordered to be there. She went there of her own accord. She didn't like it because she said that the other kids there were bullying her. They were harassing her. They would pull her hair. They would hit her. They would say really awful things to her. They would say awful things about her. And so her mom was like, tell one of the counselors, just try to keep to yourself. I guess they were under the impression that she had to stay, which again, I'm like, fucking try me. I'm walking out of here with my child, bitch. You're not keeping her. She's mine. But she ended up staying. And so the night that Colleen died, they had talked on the phone and they were supposed to talk again the next day. And of course, by the time she called back, Colleen was gone. Very, very sad. It was January 12th, 1995, when Christa Pike, along with her two accomplices, Tadaryl Shipp and Shadala Peterson, lured Colleen Slemmer into an isolated area outside of the UT campus. It was near Tyson Park. And the reason they did so was a mix of jealousy, rivalry, and just big fat misguided beliefs. Christa had brought some weapons with her. She had borrowed a small meat cleaver from someone. I need a whole article about that. I don't know where she got the meat cleaver. I don't know how that conversation came about. Hey, can I borrow your meat cleaver? Why do you have a meat cleaver? These are kids at a program where why do you have a meat cleaver with you? You're here studying. It would be like asking somebody in the dorm to borrow their meat cleaver. Do you need a meat cleaver? I don't know. Anyway, but she brought a meat cleaver and a box cutter with her. So they bring Colleen out and tell her, hey, we've got some weed to smoke. Do you want to come smoke with us? And she's like, yeah, sure, fine. So they're like, we're going to go out to the park to do it. We don't want to get caught. So they bring her there. They all four go together. They sign out on the sign out sheet. Okay. They get up there. They're walking. And Colleen is like, how much further are we going to walk? Like, where's the weed? Why do we have to go this far? Like, it's late. Like, what are we doing? And finally, Christa turns around and just starts slashing Colleen with the meat cleaver and the box cutter. Tadaryl ends up joining in the attack. From all accounts, Shadala did not stab or cut Colleen, but she did help drag her back when she tried to run away. And she did help, I think, hold her down. And she might have kicked her, punched her, stuff like that. Keep that in mind. According to Tadaryl and Colleen, and I think Shadala, this attack lasted for like 45 minutes, maybe an hour. That's horrific. That is such a long time. At one point, Christa even said, "Why won't you die?" They stabbed her over 300 times. And they were like, she just won't die. She just won't die. And Christa later told police that at some point she just reached this point in the attack where she was like, it's going full bore. Like, it's going full force. I can't back up now. They end up having Colleen take her sweater off, and then they end up taking her bra off. And they're just slashing at her. They're slashing at her crotch. They're cutting through her jeans. Christa said that Colleen was begging to be let go. Please let me go. I won't tell anybody this happened. Nobody has to know, all that kind of stuff. I'll just go back to Florida. Just please don't do this. And Christa told her to shut up. And she said, I don't want to hear you talking to me. And she was like, well, it's harder to hurt somebody when they're talking to you. No chill. Christa has no chill. She's just like, no part of her is like, wow, this is a human being that is talking to me. Maybe I should stop trying to murder her. She's like, I'm trying to murder you. Would you shut up, please? What is happening in her brain? That's horrific. Colleen tried to run away. She was dragged back to the scene. And she tried to fight back too. I mean, she fought hard. She fought for 45 minutes. But she's got Tadaryl and Christa, both with weapons, a box cutter and a meat cleaver. And then at one point, and Christa also asked her multiple times, do you know who is doing this to you? Do you know who is doing this to you? And Colleen was like, yes, I know who's doing this to me. She asked her that over and over. Like, she wanted to be sure that Colleen knew, like, it's me that's doing it and you deserve it. Like, and then she's like, why won't you die? Colleen held on for so long. And then Christa finally took a big piece of asphalt that she found and smashed Colleen's skull. By this point, they've already carved the pentagram into her chest and the one into her forehead. They did this before she died. She was still alive. And Christa leans down and takes a piece of Colleen's skull and puts it into her jacket pocket, her leather jacket pocket, to keep as a trophy. Disgusting. So Colleen's body is found the next morning. This is called into the police, but the police don't know who their victim is. There's no ID on her, and they're not sure who it is. So they contact the university. At first, they think this is a student who's gone missing. If they've been reported missing, we'll figure it out that way. They come up empty-handed there, and then they get a call, and they get a tip about a guy at Job Corps who's into satanic worship. Well, obviously, that's going to pique their interest because they've got pentagrams carved into their victim. So they go to Job Corps and they say, do you have like a sign-in, sign-out sheet that we could check and see if anybody signed out around, between the hours of whatever? Because it happened like late into like overnight. And they're like, absolutely, we have a sign-out sheet. Here you go. So they look at the sign-out sheet and there are 4 names that signed out: Tadaryl, Christa, Colleen, Shadala. And then he looks underneath it because they have to sign back in when they get back. And only 3 names signed back in: Tadaryl, Christa, Shadala. Colleen doesn't sign back in. So they know they've got their victim. What the fuck were y'all thinking? You signed out, you put a paper stamp where we all 4 left together and only 3 of us came back? Come on, guys. So obviously, they find Christa, Tadaryl, and Shadala. So bingo bongo, dudes. Like, did you think they weren't going to check the sign in and sign out sheet? I just don't understand that, but glad that they didn't think of that at all. Like, not even a little bit. That morning though, okay, let's backtrack just a hair. That morning when the police were at the scene and they're taping it off, they are having crime scene come out, doing all these things, a crowd gathers. People want to know what's going on. People want to know what happened, who's back there, all that kind of stuff. One of the people they later realize one of the people who shows up is Christa Pike. And she's asking the police, what do you got there? Do you have any evidence? Do you know who did this? Like, she's asking questions. They also said that next morning at breakfast, so during the time that the police are investigating, they are having breakfast at Job Corps. And one of the girls at the breakfast table is like, where's Colleen? Like, she hasn't come down to breakfast. And Christa pats her jacket pocket because she has part of Colleen's skull on the inside of her jacket. She pats her jacket and says, oh, she's right here with me. And they were like, weird joke. I don't get it. But like, okay. Like, they were like, I didn't really think anything of it. I didn't understand what it meant, but I didn't think anything of it. And, come to find out that she had a piece of her skull there with her. And she was proud of it. She supposedly told other people at Job Corps that she'd been the one who murdered Colleen, and she liked it and she thought it was funny and like all of these things. Once they bring her and Tadaryl and Shadala in for questioning, they all totally confess. And really, Christa seemed proud of it. She seemed like the detective York was like, she acted like that was the best thing she'd ever done. And you could tell she really felt that way. Like, oh my gosh. So Christa goes to trial and she is just big fat convicted immediately. Now, the defense had her mom testify, and her mom seemed remorseful, but for her daughter. Now, I didn't see all of her mom's testimony, but it was very like, Christa doesn't deserve this. I should be the one sitting there, not her. I was a terrible mother. I did this. This is all my fault. She seems really upset about that. And okay, like, yeah, sure, you can take some accountability that you were not a good parent. But it does kind of feel like her mom, maybe because she wasn't a good parent when Christa was younger, seems to kind of like, I don't want to say coddle her now, because I mean, she's in jail. Like, what is she, but is sort of like, I'm your friend that agrees with you now, or I'm not going to hold you accountable for anything, or, that kind of thing, because she's just acting like Christa has no part in this, and Christa has a big part in this. And Colleen's mom said that during the trial, they found out that Christa had tried to kill her little sister when they were younger. I mean, this has been going on a long time. Christa Pike was convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder, and she received the death penalty. She was the youngest woman to receive the death penalty in Tennessee, and she remains the only woman on death row. It was obvious to everyone, the judge, the jury, Colleen's loved ones, the detectives, everybody, that Christa had absolutely no remorse for this murder. She would smirk during the trial. Colleen's mom, May, said she never looked at me. Not once did she look at me, but she would turn around and smirk to her mom and smile and giggle and laugh. Like, she was like giddy when they talked about autopsy results, like all of these things. It's very, very disturbing. But when they gave her the death penalty, oh, you bet your ass she cried. Oh, she cried. She couldn't handle that, right? So everyone was like, it's pretty obvious she has no remorse for this murder at all. It is of no concern to her that a girl lost her life. But this was confirmed when a letter that she wrote to Tadaryl in jail was intercepted. And this was before his trial. So she went on trial and was convicted first. Now he's in jail, but he's not faced trial yet. And in the letter, in part, she writes, "Please write me. I miss you so much. You see what I get for trying to be nice to the hoe? I went ahead and bashed her brains out so she'd die quickly instead of letting her bleed to death and suffer more. And they fucking fry me. Ain't that some shit? Please write me and tell me what you're feeling. Also, tell your lawyer if he wants me to testify for you. I will. Love you for the rest of my life." And she signed it, Lil Devil. Like, Christa, what I do not have time for today is your bullshit. Oh my gosh. You tried to be nice to her? Do you forget that you tortured her for 45 minutes before you did that? Was that you being nice to her? I don't understand. by the way, Christa, you're paranoid. She didn't want your boyfriend. So Tadaryl and Shadala were not completely off the hook. We'll talk about Tadaryl first. He received a life sentence, but he was tried as a juvenile and he was convicted as a juvenile. So he got life with parole after 25 years. And he will be eligible. By the time he gets parole, he'll be in his 60s. Shadala Peterson, though, agreed. She pled out. She accepted a plea deal. They wanted her to testify. So she testified and she ended up getting probation. Probation for taking part in a brutal murder. She didn't go get help. She didn't ask anybody for help. She didn't try to help the victim. She participated. She held her down. She drug her back. Supposedly, she did not wield either of the two weapons that they brought with them, but she certainly didn't try to help. And she did keep Colleen there, which ultimately led to her death. She got parole. Then she got rearrested later for an unrelated charge and got probation for that as well. That's very disappointing for Colleen's family. They don't understand. How could she get nothing just in exchange for her testimony? And honestly, they didn't need her testimony to convict Christa. I wouldn't think. I would not think. She confessed, which we know people can falsely confess, but she confessed to like everybody, even before Colleen's body was found, supposedly. So she had a piece of her skull in her damn jacket. Where'd you get that, Christa? I think the evidence was pretty hard hitting against her. So Christa ends up trying to appeal her sentence for decades. And she would try to overturn like her conviction. Her attorneys submitted a petition to try to have things overturned, try to have her sentence reduced, things like that, because of the mitigating factors they say that she has in her background, saying that she suffered torture and abuse herself, that she suffered rape as a child from her mother's boyfriends and stuff like that. And that none of those things were admitted into trial. The jury didn't hear it. And that the judge erred by not letting those things come in, that the jury should have heard about that. And it possibly could have changed the outcome. And maybe she would have gotten a different sentence or a lighter sentence. That has never been successful for them. This has been denied for every appeal. She is still obviously incarcerated. She's on death row. But she didn't stop there. In 2001, she tried to kill a fellow inmate and ended up getting an additional 25 years added on to her sentence. Let me tell you something. You can say a lot of stuff about Christa Pike, but she's got some fucking balls, okay? Because listen to this. She ends up getting into it with another woman in the prison named Patricia Jones. Patricia Jones had been convicted of killing an elderly woman in her East Knoxville house. And so she's in jail. They're both in jail together. Christa at this point has a girlfriend, Natasha Cornett. And supposedly Patricia didn't like Natasha, or I think that's what it was. Patricia didn't like Natasha for whatever reason. And so Natasha tells Christa, and Christa does not appreciate this. She doesn't appreciate that Patricia doesn't like Natasha. And so she decides, we've got to do something about this. So they take advantage of a time when a fire ends up breaking out in a wing of the prison. And so the employees move Patricia Jones, Natasha Cornett, and Christa Pike into the same exercise cage. Now, Christa is supposed to be on, like, she's 23 hours a day locked down by herself. And then she only gets out an hour a day to exercise. She's violent. She stayed violent the whole time she was in prison. I think it's known to the guards that they have problems with each other. But for whatever reason, they're going to put these three dangerous women together in a cage. And what you thought happened. I guess they start getting into it. And so Christa takes a lace from her boot and starts choking Patricia. And then she later tells investigators that she flips Patricia, who at that time weighed more than 200 pounds, onto her stomach and sat on her and was choking her that way. And then officers finally, get in there and they're like, hey, pull her off and all that kind of stuff. And she said, I don't want to say that I intended to kill her, but I would say that I didn't care if she died. I wouldn't lose any sleep over it if she did. But she ended up talking to her mom on the phone on a recorded fucking line. And she tells her mom, quote, and I wrapped that shoestring around of her and I tried to choke the damn life out of her. She was passed out on the ground, mama, twitching, foaming at the mouth. Her eyeballs were bugged out so far her eyelids were flipped up. And then she said, see, now I know the difference between premeditated murder and what happened with Colleen. Because, see, I premeditated the hell out of this. Sure I did. If I'd have had 30 more seconds, we'd have had a little chalk line out there in our rec pen and that bitch would be gone somewhere. She's very country. My goodness. She just can't stop. She also ended up in 2004 trying to break out of jail. She tried to start like a romance with some guy who was like, I'm going to break you out and like all this stuff. And they tried to do it and it didn't work. And she got in trouble for that too. And like, she just does not learn. She does not learn. Well, and I don't even think she needs to learn. She knows better. She just doesn't give a fuck. She doesn't care what happens to other people around her. She doesn't care how many people she kills. Since her daughter's murder in 1995, May Martinez, Colleen's mom, has been fighting to have Christa executed. She came up for execution in 2020. It got delayed because of COVID. She still has not been executed. And May said, if I'm being honest, I'd want done to her what she did to my child. And she received the electric chair. By the way, they're not going to do that now, but at the time, that's what she received. She didn't receive lethal injection. She received electric chair. And when she was asked about that by a reporter, like back around the time that she was convicted, she said, oh, I just don't think about that because I don't think it'll ever happen. I just have a lot of hope and I know I don't deserve to be here and stuff like that. Like just very just so fucking disrespectful. And I don't know. But anyway, May is like, if I had my choice, she'd have to sit there and be tortured like my daughter did for 45 minutes. She fought for so long. I cannot even imagine. It's terrible. And I can't blame Colleen's mom for feeling that way. I can't blame her. The pain of losing a child in the way that she did. And then you couple that with Christa just being smug as fuck all the time. I cannot imagine what she's gone through. And I can't blame her, not even a little bit. At this time, Christa is still on death row. She's not been executed. As far as I can tell, there has not been another execution date set, but May is fighting to have that rescheduled. And that is the case, you guys. Let me know what you think about it. This is one of those cases where nature and nurture, they all do. Nature and nurture have a part in it, but you really see kind of both sides of it, the way that Christa was brought up. Supposedly Tadaryl, I don't know much about Shadala's upbringing, but Tadaryl supposedly was raised in like a great household and had a really close family and like all these things. So it, that's not always an indicator, but by all accounts, Christa did have a terrible upbringing, but she also seemed to be just predisposed to violence from a very, very young age. Very young age. Then again, you have to wonder about her never having bonded with a caregiver and that kind of stuff, not until she went to live with her grandmother. And then her grandmother passes away, which obviously is it's not like her grandmother just abandoned her, but she experiences that as abandonment and as rejection. And then she goes to live with her dad. He doesn't want her. The mom doesn't want her. They're shipping her off to Job Corps. Those are things that have a profound effect for sure. And you also think about Colleen just trying to get an education so she can get a job in something that she's really interested in and passionate about. and Christa being paranoid that everybody wants her man, that's worth killing somebody over. And she to this day is proud that she did that. It remains one of her greatest accomplishments. Very, very disturbing. But if anything can come out of this, it is that we can remember Colleen and try to carry her light forward, do something to help somebody else. And I love you guys. I'll see you next week. Bye. If you like this episode, be sure to like this episode and follow the show so that you never miss out on new episodes. Get in on the conversation on Facebook and Instagram. You can find us at Killer Queens Pod, or you can join our Facebook discussion group at Killer Queens Podcast, where we discuss cases covered on the show and all things 90s. If you want to submit a case to be covered on the show, visit killerqueenspodcast.com/case submission and just complete the form. And if we cover the case, we'll give you a shout out on the show. Lilas.